The alarm bells rang through every level of Nexus Prime, the largest space station anyone had ever built. The sound echoed off metal walls and through the long corridors where beings from 12 different worlds lived and worked together. This was not a drill. This was not a test. This was the kind of alarm that meant something very bad was happening somewhere in the galaxy. Commander Jake Morrison stepped out of his small quarters on level 7 and looked around. Other beings were rushing through the hallways, their faces showing worry and fear. The tall, gray-skinned Altarians moved quickly on their long legs. The rock-like crystalline people rolled along the floor, their bodies making soft clicking sounds. Even the floating gas clouds that were the methane lords seemed to move faster than usual through their special tubes. Jake had been living on Nexus Prime for 6 months now. He was 35 years old and had spent most of his life in the Earth Defense Force. His job here was simple: represent humanity at the Galactic Council meetings. It was not an easy job, but it was important. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 15 years, which was nothing compared to some species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The emergency meeting call came through his communication device. All representatives needed to get to the main council chamber right away. Jake put on his dark blue uniform jacket and walked quickly through the station. He had learned his way around pretty well, but Nexus Prime was huge. It took 15 minutes to reach the council chamber even when walking fast. The chamber was a big round room with seats arranged in circles. Each species had their own section designed for their specific needs. The methane lords had special tanks filled with the gas they needed to breathe. The insect-like hive queens had platforms where they could spread their wings. The cerebrans, who looked almost human but with larger heads, sat in chairs that helped them focus their mental powers. Jake took his place in the human section. There were only 3 chairs there, showing how new humans were to all this. Most other species had dozens of representatives. He looked around the room and saw fear on many faces. Whatever was happening, it was bad enough to scare beings who had lived for centuries and seen everything the galaxy could throw at them. Chancellor Vextar of the Altarians stood up at the center of the room. He was tall, even for his species, and his gray skin had a slight blue tint that meant he was very stressed. Vextar had been the head of the Galactic Council for over 200 years. Jake had never seen him look worried before today. "Members of the Council," Vextar said, and his words were instantly translated into every language in the room. "We have detected something that should not exist. Our deep space sensors have found a fleet of ships unlike anything we have ever seen." The room became very quiet. Jake could hear the soft humming of the life support systems and the gentle bubbling from the methane lord tanks. No one moved or spoke. "These ships," Vextar continued, "are made of dark matter. They do not reflect light. They do not show up on our scanners. We can only detect them because they bend space around them with their gravity. According to our best scientists, it should be impossible to build anything out of dark matter." A ripple of worried sounds went through the chamber. The crystalline representative, a being that looked like a walking diamond, flashed with bright colors that Jake had learned meant extreme concern. One of the hive queens released a cloud of chemicals that made the air smell like flowers, but Jake knew this meant she was very afraid. "How many ships?" asked Admiral Kresh of the warrior clans. The reptile-like being was covered in scales and had sharp teeth that he showed when he was thinking hard. The warrior clans were the strongest fighters in the galaxy, so if Kresh was worried, everyone should be worried. "Our best estimate is over 10,000 vessels," Vextar replied. "They range in size from what we think are destroyers up to ships as large as space cities. They are moving in perfect formation toward the center of our galaxy." Jake felt his stomach drop. 10,000 ships was more than the entire galactic defense fleet, and if they were made of dark matter, none of their weapons would work against them. "What about the systems they have passed through?" This question came from Dr. Yella of the Science Collective, a being whose body was mostly brain with tiny arms and legs. "Have any civilizations made contact with this fleet?" The silence that Followed was worse than any alarm. Vexstar looked down at his notes, and Jake could see his hands shaking slightly. "The fleet has passed through the Keeper systems in Sector 7, Vexstar said quietly. "We have received no communications from any of the Keeper worlds since the fleet arrived there 3 days ago." The chamber erupted in shocked voices and sounds. The Keepers were one of the oldest and most peaceful species in the galaxy. They lived on beautiful crystal worlds and spent their time creating art and music. They had some of the best defensive technology anyone had ever seen, shields that could stop almost any attack if something had happened to them. 50 billion Keepers, whispered someone behind Jake. He turned to see Dr. Lisa Shun, another human representative who specialized in alien cultures. Her face was pale and her hands were gripping the arms of her chair. 50 billion beings, and they just ... went silent. Jake had been in many battles during his military career. He had seen enemy fleets and faced impossible odds. But this was different. This was not just about fighting and winning. This was about something that might be able to destroy entire civilizations without anyone even knowing how. "What do we know about their weapons?" Jake asked, standing up. All the alien representatives turned to look at him. He was still getting used to being the voice of humanity in these meetings. "We know nothing," Vexstar admitted. "Our probe ships have tried to get close enough to scan them, but the probes are destroyed before they can transmit any useful data. The few automated sensors that survived long enough to send information back show that the dark matter ships seem to absorb all energy directed at them." "So our weapons won't work," said Admiral Kresh. "It was not a question. That is correct. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, particle beams, all our standard weapons appear to have no effect on dark matter constructs." Jake sat back down and tried to think. In all his years of military training, he had learned that every enemy had weaknesses. The key was finding those weaknesses before the enemy found yours. But how do you fight something that exists partly outside normal space? "Where are they headed?" asked the Methane Lord representative through his translator device. "Based on their current course, they appear to be moving toward the galactic core," Vexstar replied. "If they maintain their present speed, they will reach the inner systems within 2 months." The galactic core was where the oldest civilizations lived. It was also where the ancients had gone millions of years ago before they disappeared. If this dark matter fleet was heading there, it meant they had a specific target in mind. Jake looked around the chamber at all the different species represented there. These beings had built an amazing civilization that spanned thousands of star systems. They had created art, science, and technology beyond anything humans had ever imagined. And now something was coming that might destroy it all. "We need more information," Jake said, standing up again. "We need to understand what these ships want and where they came from. Running away won't solve this problem." "What do you suggest, Commander Morrison?" Vexstar asked. "Send a diplomatic mission?" Jake replied. "Try to communicate with them. Maybe they're not here to destroy us. Maybe they want something else." The chamber fell silent again as everyone considered this idea. It was dangerous, probably suicidal, but it might be their only chance to understand what they were facing. "And who," asked Admiral Kresh with a slight smile showing his sharp teeth, "would be brave enough or foolish enough to volunteer for such a mission?" Jake looked around the room one more time, then back at the Admiral. "I will." 3 days had passed since the emergency meeting, and Jake Morrison had not slept well since then. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw images of empty Keeper worlds floating in space, their crystal cities dark and silent. The idea of volunteering for a diplomatic mission had seemed brave when he said it in the council chamber. Now, alone in his quarters, it seemed more like suicide. The Galactic Council had been meeting non-stop since the announcement about the dark matter fleet. Jake had attended every session, watching as the greatest minds in the galaxy struggled to understand something that should not exist. The discussions went in circles. Some wanted to evacuate entire systems. Others wanted to gather every ship they could find and make a stand. A few suggested trying to hide in deep space until the fleet passed by. None of the ideas seemed to work. The dark matter ships moved too fast for evacuations to be effective. Fighting them was impossible when weapons had no effect. And hiding would only delay the problem, not solve it. Jake walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, heading toward the military planning center. Along the way, he passed groups of beings from different worlds, all talking in worried voices. The crystalline people flickered with nervous colors. The insect-like hive queens moved their wings in patterns that meant they were scared. Even the usually calm cerebrans seemed agitated, their mental communications creating a buzz in the air that made Jake's head hurt. The military center was a large room filled with holographic displays showing star maps and fleet positions. Admiral Kresh stood at the center, his scaled skin dark with frustration. Around him, military officers from a dozen different species worked at control panels, trying to make sense of the impossible situation. "Commander Morrison," Admiral Kresh called out when he saw Jake enter. "Come look at this." Jake walked over to where the Admiral stood. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy floated in the air in front of them, with small red dots showing the last known positions of the dark matter fleet. "We've been tracking their movement for the past 72 hours, Kresh explained. "Look at their formation." Jake studied the display. The red dots were arranged in a perfect pattern, each ship maintaining exactly the same distance from its neighbors. The formation stretched across several light years but never changed shape. "It's like they're connected by invisible strings," Jake said. "Exactly, and watch this." Kresh touched a control, and the display showed the fleet's movement over time. The entire formation moved as one unit, never breaking pattern, never changing speed. "Have we tried to communicate with them?" Jake asked. "Every known communication method," replied Dr. Yela of the Science Collective, floating over on her small hover platform. "Radio waves, quantum entanglement signals, mathematical sequences, even telepathic broadcasts. No response to anything." Jake looked at the map again. Something about the formation bothered him, but he could not figure out what it was. It looked familiar somehow, like something he had seen before but could not remember where. "What about the probe ships we sent?" he asked. "Destroyed," Admiral Kresh said grimly. "Every single one. As soon as they get within scanning range, they simply stop transmitting. We assume they are destroyed, but we have no proof of what happens to them." Dr. Chun appeared at Jake's shoulder. She had been studying the reports from all the destroyed probes, trying to find any pattern or clue that might help them understand the enemy. "I've been analyzing the probe data," she said, holding up a small device that projected holographic information. "The probes don't just stop working, they seem to be absorbed. Their last transmissions show energy readings that suggest they are being pulled into the dark matter ships." "Absorbed how?" Jake asked. "We don't know. But it's not like being shot or exploded. It's more like they just disappear into the ships themselves." This information made Jake even more uncomfortable. An enemy that could absorb other ships was far more dangerous than one that simply destroyed them. It suggested that the dark matter fleet might be getting stronger with each encounter. "Any word from the diplomatic mission?" Dr. Chun asked. Jake shook his head. The council had approved his suggestion to send a diplomatic team, but finding volunteers had been difficult. Most species believed it was a suicide mission. Finally, a mixed crew from several worlds had agreed to try. Their ship, the Harmony, had launched 2 days ago toward the fleet's projected path. "They should be making contact within the next few hours," Admiral Kresh said. "If they survive long enough to transmit anything useful." The three of them stood in silence, watching the holographic display. The red dots continued their steady movement toward the galactic core, leaving empty space behind them. Jake tried to imagine what the crews of those ships might be thinking if they thought at all. Were they aliens from another galaxy? Were they machines? Were they something else entirely? "Commander Morrison," came a voice from across the room. Jake turned to see Chancellor Vexstar approaching, his tall form moving quickly between the workstations. "I need to speak with you privately." Jake followed the Chancellor to a small office at the side of the military center. Vexstar closed. the door and activated a privacy field that would prevent anyone from overhearing their conversation. "I've been in contact with the oldest members of the council," Vextar said, his blue-tinted skin showing stress. "The Ancients' archive has been opened for the first time in 3 million years." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. The Ancients' archive was legendary, containing records from the first civilization to achieve interstellar travel. Most people believed it was just a myth. "What did you find?" Jake asked. "References to something called the Correctors," Vextar replied. "Dark beings that appeared whenever a civilization became too advanced. The records are incomplete, but they suggest that these Correctors were responsible for the disappearance of several ancient species." "You think that's what we're facing?" "I think we are facing something that has done this before," Vextar said. "The question is why they have come now, and what they consider too advanced." Before Jake could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the station. The two of them rushed back to the military center where chaos had erupted. Officers were shouting reports in different languages while the translation system struggled to keep up. "What's happening?" Vextar demanded. "The Harmony is transmitting?" Admiral Kresh called out. "They've made contact with the fleet." Jake pushed through to the communications station where a Cerebran officer was receiving the transmission. The mental link allowed for faster communication than normal radio waves. "Report," Jake said. The Cerebran's large eyes went wide with fear. They're not ships," he said, his mental voice shaking. "The dark matter constructs ... They're alive." The communication center fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Jake felt cold despite the warm air in the room. "What do you mean, alive?" Dr. Chun asked. "The Harmony reports that the fleet is composed of living dark matter entities," the Cerebran continued. "They exist partially in normal space and partially in dimensions we cannot perceive. They are not using ships." "They are the ships? Are they hostile?" Admiral Kresh asked. The Cerebran was quiet for a moment, receiving more information. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "The Harmony reports that the entities are not responding to diplomatic overtures. They appear to be scanning our ship. Captain Williams says they feel ... hungry." The transmission cut off suddenly. The communications officer tried to re-establish contact, but there was only empty space where the Harmony had been. Jake stared at the display showing the dark matter fleet's position. Living ships made of dark matter, scanning and absorbing everything they encountered. This was not an invasion by aliens. This was something far worse. "We need to evacuate the core systems," Chancellor Vextar said quietly. "If these entities are heading for the Galactic Center, we need to warn everyone in their path." "It won't matter," Jake said, still studying the formation pattern. "Look at how they move. This isn't random. They're searching for something specific." "What makes you think that?" Dr. Chun asked. Jake pointed at the holographic display. "The formation. I've seen it before in military training. It's a search pattern designed to cover maximum area while maintaining contact between units. They're not just traveling toward the core, they're hunting something." The implications of this realization hit everyone in the room at the same time. If the dark matter entities were hunting something in the galactic core, it meant they had a specific target. And if they were willing to absorb or destroy everything in their path to reach that target, then nowhere in the galaxy would be safe. Jake Morrison could not sleep. For the third night in a row, he lay in his small bed staring at the ceiling of his quarters. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the formation pattern of the dark matter fleet. The way they moved together, never breaking formation, never changing course. It reminded him of something, but he could not figure out what. He got up and walked to his desk, where he had spread out printed copies of all the sensor data. Jake preferred working with paper when he was thinking hard. The holographic displays were impressive, but sometimes old-fashioned. Methods worked better for solving problems. The numbers and charts covered his desk in neat piles. Movement patterns, gravitational readings, energy signatures that made no sense to the galaxy's best scientists. Jake picked up a sheet showing the fleet's path through the keeper systems. Something about the timing bothered him. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Jake opened it to find Dr. Chun standing in the hallway, holding a cup of coffee and looking as tired as he felt. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Not a chance," Jake replied, stepping aside to let her in. "I keep thinking about that formation pattern. It's driving me crazy." Dr. Chun looked at the papers scattered across his desk. "You know, my grandmother used to say that when you can't see the forest for the trees, you need to step back and look at the whole picture." Jake nodded and began gathering the papers. "Maybe you're right. I've been looking at individual data points. Let me try something different." He cleared off his desk and spread out a large star chart that showed the entire galaxy. Then he began marking the positions where the dark matter fleet had been detected. Red dots appeared across the map, showing their path from the outer rim toward the galactic core. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing at the pattern. "They're not just heading for the center. They're following a specific route." Dr. Chun leaned over the map. "What do you mean? See how they avoid certain systems? They could have taken a direct path, but instead they're making detours around some areas while going straight through others." Dr. Chin studied the map more carefully. "You're right. They avoided the Techno-Syndicate worlds completely, but they went right through the Keeper systems. And here they changed course to avoid the Psionic Confederation, but then went straight toward the ancient ruins on Epsilon Prime." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. The ancient ruins, that's it. Look at every system they visited. They spent the next hour checking each location against galactic databases. The pattern became clear very quickly. Every system the dark matter fleet had passed through contained ruins or artifacts left behind by the ancients, the mysterious first civilization that had disappeared millions of years ago. "They're following the ancient trail," Dr. Chun said quietly. "But why?" Before Jake could answer, his communication device buzzed with an emergency signal. Chancellor Vextar's voice filled the room. "All senior representatives to the council chamber immediately. We have new information about the fleet." Jake and Dr. Chun ran through the corridors of Nexus Prime, joining streams of beings heading toward the council chamber. The station felt different now, charged with fear and desperation. Even the usually cheerful maintenance robots moved more quickly than normal. The council chamber was packed. Representatives from all member species filled their sections, while others stood along the walls. Jake had never seen so many beings gathered in one place, and the mix of different breathing gases and pheromones created a thick atmosphere that made his eyes water. Chancellor Vextar stood at the center, his blue-tinted skin now almost purple with stress. Beside him, a figure that Jake had never seen before waited quietly. The being was tall and thin, wearing robes that seemed to shift color in the light. Most shocking of all, this being looked almost human except for eyes that were completely black. "Members of the council," Vextar began, "I want you to meet Scholar Arun of the Watcher Collective. His people have been observing our galaxy from outside its borders for over 5 million years." Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. The Watcher Collective was another legend, like the Ancients' Archive. Most people believed they were just stories told to young beings to encourage them to behave well. Scholar Arun stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was soft but somehow filled the entire chamber without any need for amplification. "We have watched the rise and fall of many civilizations," Arun said. "We have seen species reach great heights of knowledge and power only to disappear without explanation. Today, we break our ancient vow of silence because what approaches your galaxy threatens not just your civilizations, but the balance of all existence." Jake leaned forward, trying to catch every word. "The entities you call the Dark Matter Fleet have a different name among the Watchers," Arun continued. "We call them the Purifiers. They are not alive in the way you understand life. They are manifestations of cosmic law, created to maintain balance in the universe." "Balance?" Admiral Kresh asked, his scales rippling with confusion. "What kind of balance requires destroying entire civilizations?" "The balance between matter and energy, between order and chaos," Arun replied. "When a species advances too far beyond the natural progression of evolution, When they begin to manipulate the fundamental forces that hold reality together, the purifiers come to restore equilibrium. Dr. Chun stood up from the human section. Are you saying the ancients did something wrong? The ancients discovered how to transcend physical existence, Arun said. They learned to convert matter directly into consciousness, to exist as pure thought without need for bodies or ships or worlds. In doing so, they upset the cosmic balance. The chamber erupted in confused voices and sounds. Jake felt his stomach drop as he began to understand what this meant. The purifiers are heading for the galactic core to finish what they started millions of years ago, Arun continued once the noise died down. They seek to eliminate all traces of ancient technology and knowledge, including any species that might have been influenced by it. All species? Chancellor Vextar asked quietly. Every civilization in this galaxy has built upon foundations left by the ancients, Arun said. Your faster-than-light travel, your quantum communications, your energy weapons, all of it traces back to ancient discoveries. In the eyes of the purifiers, you are all contaminated. Jake stood up, his mind racing. How do we stop them? You cannot fight the purifiers with weapons, Arun replied. They exist partially outside normal space-time. Your missiles and energy beams cannot touch them. Your shields cannot protect you from their absorption fields. Then what do we do? Admiral Kresh demanded. Just wait for them to destroy us all? Scholar Arun was quiet for a long moment, his black eyes seeming to look at something far away. There is one possibility. The ancients did not completely transcend physical existence. Some part of them remains at the galactic core, in a state between matter and energy. If they could be convinced to reverse their transformation, to return to normal space-time, the purifiers might consider the balance restored. And how exactly do we convince beings who have existed as pure thought for millions of years to give up their transcendence? Dr. Chun asked. That, Arun said, is a question I cannot answer. But perhaps someone among your species might find a way. Jake felt all eyes in the chamber turning toward the human section. As the newest members of galactic civilization, humans had a different perspective than the older species. They had not been shaped by millions of years of tradition and established thinking. We need to get to the galactic core, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We need to find the ancients and talk to them before the purifiers arrive. Impossible, said Dr. Yilla of the Science Collective. The radiation levels near the galactic core would kill most species within hours. The gravitational distortions would tear apart any normal ship. Then we don't use normal ships, Jake replied. We use ships designed to survive in impossible conditions, ships built for durability rather than comfort. Admiral Kresh's scales shifted to show interest. What do you have in mind, human? Jake looked around the chamber at all the different species represented there. Each one had unique abilities and technologies that could contribute to such a mission, but they would need to work together in ways they never had before. We build a ship using the best technology from every species, Jake said. Crystalline armor for radiation protection, Methane Lord power cores for energy, Warrior Clan weapons for defense, Cerebran navigation systems for accuracy, and human engineering for durability. Even if such a ship could be built, Chancellor Vextar said, who would crew it? The journey to the galactic core would be incredibly dangerous. Jake looked at Dr. Chun, who nodded slightly. Then he looked at Admiral Kresh, who showed his sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. Volunteers? Jake said simply. Representatives from every species willing to risk everything to save our galaxy. The chamber fell silent as beings considered this proposal. It was dangerous beyond imagination. It would require unprecedented cooperation between species that had sometimes been enemies. And even if they succeeded in reaching the galactic core, there was no guarantee they could convince the ancients to help them, but it was the only plan that offered any hope at all. The shipyard at Nexus Prime had never seen anything like it. In the main construction bay, beings from 12 different species worked together to build a ship that could survive the impossible journey to the galactic core. The project had taken 6 weeks. And they had less than 2 weeks before the purifiers reached their destination. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck, watching crystalline engineers install armor plating that could withstand radiation levels that would cook most metals. Below them, methane lord technicians worked in their environmental suits to connect power cores that could fuel a small city. The ship looked strange, like no vessel anyone had ever seen before. "It's beautiful in an ugly sort of way," Dr. Chun said, joining Jake at the viewing window. She carried a datapad showing the final crew selections. The ship had been named Endurance, following the human tradition of naming vessels after qualities they hoped to embody. It was not pretty, but it was tough. Human engineering had provided the basic frame, designed to bend without breaking under extreme stress. Every other species had added their best technology to make it capable of surviving where no ship had gone before. "Have you finalized the crew?" Jake asked, looking at Dr. Chun's datapad. 24 beings from 8 different species," she replied. "The best pilots, engineers, scientists, and soldiers the galaxy has to offer." Each one volunteered, knowing they might not come back. Jake nodded. He had spent weeks interviewing potential crew members. The selection process had been difficult because so many beings wanted to volunteer. Despite the danger, representatives from every species had stepped forward, willing to risk everything for a chance to save their civilizations. "Captain Williams from the warrior clans will command the ship," Dr. Chun continued. "She has more experience with dangerous missions than anyone in the galaxy. Engineer Rodriguez from the Techno Syndicate will handle the power systems. Navigator Yuki from the Cerebran Collective will guide us through the gravitational maze near the core." Jake looked at the list of names. These beings had families, friends, entire worlds counting on them. The weight of responsibility felt heavier than any armor. "Any word from our long-range scouts?" he asked. Dr. Chun's expression darkened. "The purifiers have absorbed 3 more star systems. They're moving faster now, like they can sense their target getting closer. Our scouts estimate they'll reach the galactic core in 10 days. 10 days to complete an impossible journey. Find beings who had transcended physical existence millions of years ago, and somehow convince them to give up their advanced state to appease cosmic entities that existed partially outside reality." When Jake thought about it that way, it seemed hopeless. A communication chime interrupted his thoughts. Chancellor Vextar's voice came through the ship's intercom system. "All crew members to the boarding area. Final launch preparations begin in 1 hour." Jake and Dr. Chun made their way through the ship's corridors toward the main airlock. The Endurance was larger than most military vessels, but smaller than the exploration ships usually used for long journeys. Every cubic meter had been designed for survival rather than comfort. The crew gathered in the main cargo bay, which doubled as their meeting area. Jake looked around at the faces of his companions. Captain Williams stood at the front, her reptilian features calm and confident. The warrior clans were known for never showing fear, but Jake could see the tension in her movements. Engineer Rodriguez floated nearby in his environmental suit, the bioluminescent patterns on his skin glowing softly through the transparent material. The methane lords communicated through light patterns, and Rodriguez's colors showed determination mixed with worry. Navigator Yuki sat quietly in her special chair, her enlarged brain visible through the transparent dome that protected her head. The Cerebrans rarely showed emotion, but her mental emanations felt heavy with the weight of responsibility. Dr. Sarah Kim, the mission's chief scientist, stood near the wall, checking her equipment one final time. She was human, like Jake and Dr. Chun, and had volunteered despite having 3 young children back on Earth. Her expertise in ancient technology made her essential to the mission. "Before we launch," Captain Williams said, her voice carrying clearly through the bay, "I want everyone to understand what we're facing. The journey to the galactic core will take us through some of the most dangerous space in the galaxy. Radiation, storms that can cook organic matter in seconds, gravitational fields that can stretch a ship into metal spaghetti, Space-time distortions that can age you 100 years in a few minutes. She paused, looking each crew member in the eye. Any of you can still change your mind. No one will think less of you for deciding this mission is too dangerous. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Jake felt proud to be part of this group. Very well, Captain Williams continued. Our mission is simple to explain but nearly impossible to accomplish. We need to reach the galactic core, locate whatever remains of the ancient civilization, and convince them to reverse their transcendence. We have less than 10 days to do it. Engineer Rodriguez's skin patterns shifted to display a question. Captain Williams nodded to him. How will we find them once we reach the core? Rodriguez asked through his translation device. The Galactic Center is huge, and we don't know what form the ancients take now. Dr. Kim stepped forward. I've been studying the ancient ruins we've discovered over the years. Their technology left energy signatures that persist even after millions of years. If any part of them still exists in normal space, we should be able to detect those same signatures. And if they don't want to be found? Asked Pilot Zara, a young being from the Crystalline Collective whose body flashed with nervous colors. Then, we keep looking until we find them anyway, Jake said. The entire galaxy is counting on us. Failure is not an option. The final hour of preparation passed quickly. Crew members said goodbye to friends and family through video calls. Jake spoke briefly with his parents on Earth, trying not to let them see how worried he was. Dr. Chun recorded a message for her sister. Captain Williams sat quietly, following the warrior clan tradition of meditation before battle. At exactly 1400 hours station time, the Endurance detached from Nexus Prime's docking bay. Jake watched through the viewport as the massive space station grew smaller behind them. Thousands of beings lived and worked there, representing the best of galactic civilization. If this mission failed, all of that would be lost. The ship's engines engaged, pushing them toward the galactic core at speeds that would have been impossible without the advanced technology each species had contributed. The methane-lured power cores provided incredible energy. The Cerebran navigation systems plotted courses through space-time that avoided the worst hazards. The crystalline armor protected them from radiation that would have killed them instantly, but even with all these advantages, the journey would be brutal. Jake strapped himself into his acceleration couch as Captain Williams announced their first jump to hyperspace. All crew prepare for transition, she called out. Jump to galactic grid reference 7 Alpha 9 in 10 seconds. Jake felt the familiar twist in his stomach as the ship entered hyperspace. Through the viewport, stars stretched into lines of light. They were committed now. There was no turning back. The first day of the journey went smoothly. They made good time through the outer rim territories, avoiding the major shipping lanes, where they might encounter other vessels. The Purifiers were still several systems behind them, but their own scouts reported that the dark matter entities had increased their speed again. On the second day, they encountered their first major hazard. A radiation storm from an unstable pulsar created an energy field that would have destroyed any normal ship. The crystalline armor held, but the ship's internal temperature rose to dangerous levels before they cleared the affected area. By the third day, they were entering regions of space where few beings had ever traveled. The gravitational effects of the massive black hole at the galaxy's center began to distort space-time around them. Navigator Yuki worked constantly to adjust their course, her mental abilities pushed to their limits. We're being pulled off course, she reported during their daily briefing. The gravitational fields are stronger than our charts indicated. At this rate, we'll miss our target zone by several light years. Can we compensate? Captain Williams asked. Yes, but it will require us to fly closer to the black hole's event horizon. The risk of being trapped by its gravity will increase significantly. Jake looked around the room at his crewmates. They had come this far. They could not give up now. We take the risk, he said. Getting there late won't help anyone. Captain Williams nodded. Agreed. Navigator Yuki, plot the new course. All departments prepare for extreme gravitational stress. The ship groaned and creaked as they changed course toward the galactic center. Through the viewports, Jake could see space itself bending around them, stars appearing in impossible positions as gravity warped light. They were entering a realm where the normal rules of physics barely applied, and somewhere ahead of them, in the heart of that cosmic maelstrom, the ancients waited. The Endurance shook violently as it dropped out of hyperspace near the galactic core. Jake Morrison gripped his chair as warning alarms filled the ship with urgent sounds. Through the viewport, he could see something that no being had witnessed. For millions of years, at the center of everything, where the galaxy's massive black hole should have been visible, stood a structure that defied understanding. It looked like a crystal palace made of pure energy, stretching across space for thousands of kilometers. The structure pulsed with light that shifted through colors that had no names, existing both in normal space and in dimensions that human eyes could not properly see. "Sensors are going crazy," reported Dr. Kim from her science station. "I'm reading energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. This structure exists in at least 7 different dimensions simultaneously." Captain Williams fought to control the ship as gravitational waves from the structure pushed against them. "Navigator Yuki, can you get us closer without being torn apart?" The Cerebran's mental emanations felt strained as she worked to understand the cosmic forces around them. "The structure is creating its own gravity field. It's pulling spacetime around itself like a whirlpool. I can get us closer, but we'll need to follow a very specific path." Jake watched the energy readings on his display. "Those power levels are incredible. If this is what the ancients became, no wonder the purifiers consider them a threat to cosmic balance." "Contact!" shouted Engineer Rodriguez from his environmental suit. His bioluminescent patterns flashed urgent warnings. "I'm detecting the purifier fleet. They're approaching from the outer rim. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. 6 hours to find." Beings who had transcended physical existence, convinced them to give up millions of years of advancement and somehow restore cosmic balance. Jake felt the weight of the entire galaxy pressing down on him. "Take us in, Navigator Yuki," Captain Williams ordered. "All crew to emergency stations." The Endurance moved carefully toward the crystal structure, following a twisting path through gravitational currents that could have crushed them instantly. As they got closer, Jake began to see details that made his mind struggle to understand what he was looking at. The structure was not solid. It was made of pure consciousness given form, thought made visible in the physical universe. Patterns of light moved through it like synapses firing in a vast brain. This was not a building or a machine. This was the ancients themselves, transformed into something beyond matter and energy. "I'm detecting communication attempts," reported Communications Officer Zara, her crystalline body flickering with excitement. "The structure is trying to speak to us, but the language is unlike anything in our translation databases." Dr. Kim worked frantically at her station. "It's not exactly language. It's more like direct transmission of concepts and ideas. They're not speaking to our ears, they're speaking to our minds." Jake felt a strange pressure in his head, like someone trying to reach into his thoughts. The sensation was not unpleasant, but it was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Suddenly, the ship's main display lit up with symbols that seemed to write themselves across the screen. The symbols shifted and changed, slowly becoming letters and words that the crew could understand. "Who disturbs our meditation?" appeared on the screen. "Why do physical beings approach the realm of pure thought?" Captain Williams looked at Jake. They had discussed who should speak for the mission, and everyone had agreed that the human perspective might be most effective with beings who had moved beyond normal existence. Jake stood up and faced the display. "We are representatives of the Galactic Council. We come seeking help against entities called the Purifiers, who threaten to destroy all civilizations in our galaxy." The symbols on the screen shifted more rapidly. "The correctors come. We have sensed their approach for some time. They seek to undo our great work, to force us back into the prison of matter and energy." "Your great work is threatening the cosmic balance," Jake replied carefully. The purifiers believe that your transcendence has upset the natural order of the universe. Natural order? The symbols pulsed with what might have been amusement. We have moved beyond the need for crude matter. We exist as pure consciousness, unlimited by physical form. This is the next step in evolution. Dr. Kim stepped forward. But your transcendence is based on ancient technology that other species have built upon. The purifiers consider all of galactic civilization contaminated by your influence. That is not our concern, came the reply. Lesser beings must find their own path to enlightenment. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. These beings were willing to let billions die rather than give up their advanced state. He thought about all the people counting on this mission, all the civilizations that would be destroyed if they failed. 50 billion keepers have already been absorbed by the purifiers, Jake said, his voice getting louder. Entire star systems have gone silent. Your choice to transcend physical existence has doomed everyone else in the galaxy. Physical existence is temporary, the symbols replied coldly. Consciousness is eternal. Those beings will eventually transcend their crude forms and join us in pure thought. They're not choosing to transcend, Dr. Chun said, joining the conversation. They're being destroyed. The purifiers are not offering evolution. They're offering extinction. For a long moment, the display remained blank. Jake wondered if the ancients were discussing among themselves or if they had simply stopped listening. The correctors have always opposed advancement. The symbols finally appeared. They believe the universe should remain static, that consciousness should stay trapped in matter forever. We reject their limitations. Jake realized that logical arguments were not going to work. The ancients had convinced themselves that their transcendence was worth any cost. He needed to try a different approach. You're afraid, Jake said simply. The symbols flashed angrily. We have moved beyond fear. We are pure thought, unlimited by physical constraints. You're afraid of being physical again, Jake continued. You've been existing as energy for so long that you've forgotten what it means to be alive in a body? You've forgotten what it means to touch something real, to taste food, to feel the warmth of a star on your skin. Such crude sensations are beneath us now. No, they're not, Jake said, walking closer to the display. They're what make existence meaningful. You've gained incredible power, but you've lost everything that makes life worth living. You've become so advanced that you've forgotten how to be truly alive. The ship shook as gravitational waves pulsed from the structure. Jake could feel the ancient's attention focusing on him like a searchlight. You speak of things you do not understand, the symbol said. I understand that you're scared, Jake replied. You're scared that if you return to physical form, you'll be vulnerable again. You'll be able to feel pain and loss and all the things that make beings mortal. But you'll also be able to feel joy and love and wonder. You'll be able to connect with other beings instead of floating alone in your crystal palace. We are not alone. We are connected to all consciousness. Connected but not touching, Dr. Chun added. You can sense every mind in the galaxy, but you can't hold hands with a friend. You can know everything, but you can't experience the surprise of learning something new. The symbols on the screen began to flicker uncertainly. Jake pressed his advantage. The purifiers are wrong about cosmic balance, he said. But they're right about one thing. Your transcendence has isolated you from the universe you're supposed to be part of. You've become so advanced that you've forgotten why advancement matters. Warning alarms suddenly filled the ship. Engineer Rodriguez's patterns flashed urgent red. The purifier fleet has arrived. They're forming an attack formation around the structure. Through the viewport, Jake could see dark shapes materializing in space around them. The purifiers had come to finish what they started millions of years ago. You have a choice, Jake told the ancients. You can fight them as pure energy and probably lose, destroying yourselves and everyone else in the process. Or you can choose to return to physical form and show the universe that advancement doesn't mean abandoning what makes us who we are. The symbols stopped flickering. For several heartbeats, the display remained completely blank. Then, slowly, Words appeared that would change the fate of the galaxy. Remember, the symbol said. We remember what we have lost. Help us remember how to be alive again. The crystal structure began to glow brighter as the ancients prepared to reverse millions of years of transcendence. Outside, the purifiers hesitated, sensing the change. And Jake Morrison smiled, knowing that sometimes the greatest wisdom is choosing to remain beautifully, courageously, wonderfully alive.